At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, independent India's first Prime Minister, made this historic tryst with destiny speech on the eve of Independence Day on 1947. 75 years later, it is Prime Minister Narendra Modi who makes a speech that reverberates in every Indian's heart. Amrit Kal ki pehli Prabhat. The Prime Minister, in his hour-long and 5-minute speech, laid out a blueprint for a more assertive, more bold, and a new India. For the next 25 years, this is going to be a long desired effort. An India that is reflective of its aspirational 130 crore countrymen. An India that refuses to live under the shadows of its colonial past. An assertive India that charts its own course and the world takes its lead. Let's open up this discussion. With me on the broadcast, Ambassador Vora. It's a historic moment after 75 years today when the Prime Minister Narendra Modi makes the speech and talks about the next 25 years for the great India story in 2047, when India will be charting the course ahead and the world will follow suit. We are already writing the pages of history as we move days after days into becoming more assertive, more bold, more aspirational, which is very reflective of what the countrymen, the 130 crore people of our country and the ones who are living overseas actually feel and breathe about what India stands.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Always a pleasure to be on NewsX to increase my knowledge by learning from you, General Sahil, Ambassador Goyal, and Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, whose knowledge is far superior to mine. I listened very carefully to what the Prime Minister had to say, and you very rightly said that what he has set out is Vision 2047. For me, I repeat this, for me, it is Mission 25, for me personally. I don't know how many years I have left, I'm 71 years, but in 25 years, he said we will hit the ranks of the developed world. That for me was extremely significant. He talked about corruption, which, ma'am, is extremely significant again. He didn't give you a list of all the achievements, but he said that corruption is eating the innards of our society. Take a look at the Transparency International Corruption Perceptions Index. The top 20 nations, and I say this very slowly, the top 20 nations perceived to be the least corrupt are also the most developed. And the bottom 20 perceived to be the most corrupt are the least developed. In other words, there is an inverse relationship between corruption and development. He talked about this. Legislation is one thing, but we are seeing in Latin America that legislation alone is not enough. What matters is to convert it into a people's movement. Ma'am, Swachh Bharat was eminently successful. Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana was superbly successful. Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, the results are there because they became people's movement. And today, I individually take this pledge that in the remaining years of my life, try whatever I can, even more than normal, to achieve Mission 25. Ma'am, finally, what are the parameters? You've talked about the India story. What are the parameters of development? General Saab knows this, Mr. Mukherjee, Ambassador Goyal. When you talk of a developed country, the first thing you assume, sabke paas khana, everybody has enough to eat. We've been through a terrible time. I have slept hungry 52 days in 1966 when we were facing near starvation. We were told not to eat on Mondays. I know what it was. When we imported 9 and 11 million tons of wheat from the United States.
Yes.
What you look for in a developed nation is housing, water, health, education, energy, gender equality. These are all the issues that the Prime Minister has been focusing on, talking about it, to take India forward. So I believe today was a clarion call. For 200 years prior to our independence, others wrote our destiny. Ma'am, now you, kids like you, will write it so that nobody else can write it for us. I was so thrilled. I'm 6 feet 2 inches tall. Today I stand 6 feet 8 inches. Listening to this man, a people's leader, walking to the children, talking to them, and saying, we have to take India forward. It was a very basic message. It hit my heart, ma'am. All I can say is, well done, Narendra Modi. You are truly a leader of India and of the world.
Ambassador Suresh Goyal, the very essence of Prime Minister's speech, it was about a resurgent India. He particularly spoke about the shackles of communalism and slavery that need to be broken, finally, even to the remotest citizen living in our country or overseas. Now, there is an inherent message over there because of the global bullying that is witnessed against India. And erstwhile, we were at one point looking up at our erstwhile colonizers for their stamp of approval and then going ahead and following in their lead. Now, there is a massive drift from that kind of a mindset several years ago versus the last few years that have focused on India's capabilities, abilities when it comes to innovation, when it comes to manufacturing capabilities, make in India. All these are intrinsically connected to showcase India in the light that it actually is. The prowess it has when it comes to intellect, when it comes to creativity, when it comes to culture, when it comes to heritage, history, we are second to none.
Megha, shall I start now? Yes. All right. Thank you very much, Megha, first of all. Before I begin, through NewsX and through you, Megha, my heartiest felicitations to all the viewers, particularly those who watch NewsX avidly and regularly, because this channel I find, despite the difference in the beliefs of the various panelists, it encourages free discussion, debate, encourages dissent even if you don't agree with whatever the views are. And that is the reason that I like NewsX. I come here so often. So thank you very much, first of all, for giving me the place on this debate particularly. And
thank you, Ambassador.
All the viewers. And particularly to you, Megha, if I may say so, when you began with the phrase, tryst with destiny, it brought to my mind Nehru, who was one of the foremost freedom fighters, whether we acknowledge him now or not. And the advertisement which came in the newspapers had given a complete misplaced miss to Nehru. When you mentioned Nehru's tryst with destiny, thank you very much once again for that, because it reminded me of what we had read about the independence movement, not what actually things could be or different, whatever it is. But I know the independence movement, that Nehru was one of the foremost leader. Now coming to the issue, I applaud Narendra Modi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I applaud him because in the speech, he has given a very broad and very ambitious vision of India, what he will like to see it to be, not now, not 5 years hence, but not 25 years. I do hope that he will continue as the Prime Minister till that vision has been achieved, because it does require a great deal of direction, a great deal of effort and endeavor, which I think most of the people at the moment on the top leadership may not have or may not exist till the end of the century and till the end of those 100 years. And therefore, once again, my hats off to him. I applaud him for the vision. One thing that I would say here, ambition is great, but as they say, the devil lies in details. Planning, how do we achieve what he has in mind? And therefore, if you permit me, just 2 or 3 minutes, I would like to go there, if you permit me.
Absolutely.
To my mind, Prime Minister Modi, amongst the 5 pledges which he made and which he wanted people to take, there are 2 or 3 most important ones. One is about the virasat, that we must treasure our virasat. The second was about economic independence or economic autonomy, Atmanirbharta, whichever way you interpret it. And the third was research and development, Anusandhan, Vigyan and Anusandhan, Jawan, Vigyan, Anusandhan. Most of the discussions that I've heard today related that to defense. I really don't know whether it is because Prime Minister Modi mentioned Jawan in the beginning of the pledge, or it's basically because we relate our strength only to military. General Sehgal is here. I hope he will not object to my saying that national strength depends not just on military, it's a comprehensive national strength, and we all work toward the same comprehensive national strength. In the military plays an important role, but so do others. Now, coming to these three, I will not talk about the other two at all, really. Virasat. What does virasat mean? Virasat, to my mind, means what we have inherited from our forefathers, what we have inherited from our history. And if I recall my history, the first sentence that comes to my mind is Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. Truth is one, but the people, the sage, will describe it in different manners. And that basically is the foundation of our virasat. Our virasat is that we shall not criticize others only because they think differently. We shall not, we should tolerate dissent. We shall not allow the dissent to turn into disputes. Therefore, or what you say, Vasudev Kutumbakam, the thing is that we need to basically have an inclusive discussion in what India is. Ambition is good. We have to respect our virasat. But are we going there now?
Okay.
How do we do that if we have to? Number one. We can talk about it more later on. Number two, Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Quickly, Ambassador, yes.
Do I have just 2 more minutes?
About 30 seconds. I'll have to give space to the other panelists as well. Yes.
Atmanirbhar Bharat. What does Atmanirbharta mean? Atmanirbharta does not mean that you can do everything yourself. Atmanirbharta means interlinked economy, interlinked system, where you have your say. Please recall that China is strong not because of military, but because China is a large market and China is able to dictate its terms. So should India. India should be able to show its economic fist to get what it wants. And last point that I wanted to talk about was Anusandhan. R&D is again not autonomy. R&D is basically to get the most out of the poor resources you have. Develop designs which suit you the best. I think these are very, very important parameters. We need to work in those directions. Thank you very much, Megha.
Thank you, Ambassador. Gautam Mukherjee, talking about the 5 vows, the 5 pledges that the Prime Minister made, and also appealed to the youth of our country to hold steadfast to these 5 pledges and build India into the superpower that it has the capability of achieving itself as. There are practical challenges to it, and there are quite a few major impediments that will come, and how can we then overcome them? There are difficulties, and the same was mentioned by the Prime Minister in his speech, but the bigger the challenges, there are going to be stronger efforts that will have to be put forth.
Well, Megha, happy Independence Day to you, NewsX, and all our viewers. I think, we are subject to the luxury of having gotten over most of our most urgent challenges and needs in order to think of becoming a developed nation in a realistic manner. Today, we are at a maturity after 75 years, more properly, really after 30 years since 1991, and we are ready to come out of the label of an emerging nation into that of a developed nation. Now, in order to do that, we have to shed some of the old snakeskins, such as the vestiges of colonialism, the rent exacting attitude that has been injected into this country right from the Mughal times, where a chap was given a jagir and then he was told to do with it what he will, which amounted to the same as, let us extort and let us be rich and pay our overmasters and, suppress our underlings in a feudal sense. That has carried over, and gradually we are now at a stage where the Prime Minister is taking the lead to say, look, we cannot have this kind of rent-seeking corruption in the political classes. We cannot make our political parties into private limited companies run by families. And it is up to you to hold hands with me and make this change. Why? Because developed countries should work on merit. Now, the 5 vows are really abstract ideas. And they are abstract ideas that are concretized only when the people adopt them and turn them into examples of reality. So when you say Atmanirbhar, it means that you've also got to be innovative enough to come up with new technologies, innovations, the startups and such like, which he mentioned briefly, the 5G, the communications. So what is happening is, it isn't much of a pledge if only the government in isolation is trying to bring this country into the ranks of the developed, in fact, into the 3rd largest economy in the world, and as things stand today, because things can go topsy-turvy as well. The first 2 are America and China. Will they indeed be the first 2? And we are looking at least $10 trillion, but is that too little? Should we look at Minister Goel's predictions of 30 trillion, more likely? Well, it's hard to imagine today at 3.5 trillion, but that's where we are headed, and it's an exciting and open road.
It's an exciting and open road. Like you said, the 5 vows, the 5 pledges are abstract. They need to be concretized. They need to be put out into pointers and SOPs for the actual implementation, and then the achievement that needs to be brought forth in these large 25 years. Now, these large 25 years have to be broken down into 5-year plans, 2-year plans, 3-year plans, and it has to be taken forward, and there has to be unity amongst the people of the country. There has to be a stable government. There has to be a political will to take this forth, and a vision that has been put forth by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the subsequent governments, whether it is the BJP or any other that comes to forth, has to take this forward. If there are discrepancies, if there are breaks, then it will lead us astray to our goal that has to be followed. Major General P.K. Sehgal, would you like to comment, particularly with the innovation adage that the Prime Minister added to Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan, and now Jai Abhigyan, Anusandhan? How should we take this R&D and innovation adage by the Prime Minister to look forward and build the Make in India story for the world to then emulate?
Prime Minister throughout his last couple of years has been giving overemphasis on innovation. If you notice, today 1/3 of all the unicorns in the last 5 years are Indians. In the first 7 months of this year, 50 more unicorns have been added up, and 1 additional unicorn is coming up every week. We have the fastest growing startup ecosystem in the world today. We were filing only approximately 100 odd patents every year. In the last 5 years, we filed 9,500 patents. They were much larger than any other country, barring China and America. Slowly and steadily, we are gaining confidence, and we are gaining composure, and we being totally and absolutely backed up by the government as far as this is concerned. Our youth are beginning to do things which had never been thought of before. Even if you see in terms of our Chandrayaan, in the very first mission, it was Indian satellite which orbited the moon and said there is ample water on the north pole of the moon, which has resulted in the race for colonization of the moon. Then when we launched the Mangalyaan, once again, we were the only country which in the very first attempt succeeded in putting a satellite in Mars orbit. No other country was able to do that. The day that it was launched, I was giving a talk on technologies that can turn India around in IIT Delhi. And I told them our mission 9 months later will enter Mars orbit. And they asked me with what degree of confidence was I saying that. I said Indian scientists have been able to achieve something which the world has not been able to achieve. The Western world has spent billions of dollars on R&D. America, China, Europe, Japan, Germany, etc., Russia, on trying to make biocomputers. Biocomputers are so small that in an area occupied by one drop of water, 100,000 computers have been fitted. And I said, our scientists have achieved this breakthrough. And in this Mangalyaan, we fitted biocomputers. Their hardware is the enzyme and the software that manipulates the DNA. The world was stunned to see this. Similarly, on Mars, there are 3 rovers that are operating there. Spirit, which was launched about 15 years back, had a shelf life of only about 6 weeks. Thereafter, Opportunity, which was launched 2 years later, had a shelf life of only about 6 months. Then a 1-ton laboratory in 2016 called Curiosity was launched. All these 3 vehicles were made for NASA by Indian scientists. From 50 million kilometers away, on an everyday basis, we are manipulating those. Whenever their robotic arm breaks up, etc., we retrieve them. Whenever they get stuck, we retrieve them, repair them. You take the Indian scientists out and their mission collapses. Their life was only 6 weeks to 6 months. Today they are operating beautifully after 15 years. That's what the Indian R&D is all about. And this is something that is being given a further push by the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, in his address, there are 2 ambassadors here on the panel. They'll agree with me whenever the Prime Minister addresses, it is not only meant for domestic audience. It was meant for Indian diaspora the world over. It was meant for India's adversaries. It was meant for India's immediate and not distant neighbors and not so distant neighbors. And a very strong message was sent to them that India is on the move and India is not stoppable. And I'm very certain they've got this message. I totally agree with Ambassador Goel. That is not only the military strength that is important. The military has to work in conjunction with the Foreign Ministry as well as the Ministry of Economic Affairs. These 3 are absolutely crucial to make our nation great. And India is now on the right line. The Prime Minister has given a very clear mission statement. He's a visionary. He's told
this is
very
the mission
clearly,
statement, is the mammoth task. And I'd like to bring in KC Sharma. He's the BJP spokesperson. KC Sharma, this Nari Shakti that the Prime Minister spoke about in the beginning of his speech, the aspirations of a resurgent India, the young India, the Renaissance movement that is now being witnessed in India in adopting what is ours, our rich heritage, and letting go of the slavery that we have at this point of time been incumbent for the last several years, shedding it away, and finally the world's expectations. There has to be a tandem, an equilibrium amongst these 3 for a Nari Shakti to emerge out of India and for it to become a global power. Now, a mission statement that is for 25 years, can it be broken down, and the various union ministries and then departments under them, how are they functioning forward to achieve this dream, this $1 trillion economy that the Prime Minister envisaged, and now looking forth and looking within India for the world to take notice and follow our lead in the future?
जय हिंद। आप सभी को 15 अगस्त की हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं। मैं फेलो सीनियर पैनलिस्ट को भी नमस्कार करता हूं और उनको 15 अगस्त की बहुत बहुत शुभकामना देता हूं। आपको मेरी आवाज सही से आ रही है?
जी।
आज आदरणीय प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब ने जो बोला, हम अपनी हेरिटेज को समझें, समझने के बाद जो चीजें वहां पे हुई उनसे लर्निंग लें और फिर अपने बिहेवियर में उसको उतारें, ताकि हमें कोई दबाने की कोशिश ना कर सके, हमें कोई नीचा दिखाने की कोशिश ना कर सके। खुद मैंने जब मैं बाहर यूरोप में गया आईटी कंपनी के बिहाफ पे, एक्सपीरियंस किया कि बहुत सारे लोग जब हम विदेश में जाते हैं अपने बातें करते हैं, अपने इनोवेशंस की बातें करते हैं और वो सोचते हैं कि इंडिया में कुछ हुआ नहीं। ये मैं 10 से 15 साल पहले की बात बता रहा हूँ। लेकिन जब मैंने अपनी चीजों को देखा और अपनी चीजों को उनके सामने रखा, तो they were able to understand and give the recognition to the Indian heritage. तो वैसे ही आदरणीय प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब चाहते हैं कि हमारा यूथ हमारी हेरिटेज को समझे। दूसरा, आदरणीय प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी जी ने जो बोला कि हमारे यहाँ पे जो सबसे बड़ी जो प्रॉब्लम है वो है करप्शन और भाई भतीजावाद, उसको खत्म करना है। भाई भतीजावाद की वजह से जो व्यक्ति सबसे ज्यादा काबिल है, लायक है, मेरिट पे है, उसको काम नहीं मिल पाता, और जो कम मेरिट पे है या जो लायक नहीं है उसको जिम्मेदारी मिल जाती है, जिसकी वजह से सिस्टम, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, कंपनी, पार्टी कोलैप्स होती हैं, या फिर जो परफॉर्मेंस होनी चाहिए वो नहीं होती। तो ये उन्होंने सिर्फ पॉलिटिक्स के लिए नहीं बोला, हर जगह के लिए बोला, हर इंस्टीट्यूशंस के लिए बोला, हर ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के लिए बोला। तीसरी बात जो आदरणीय प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब ने इनोवेशन के साथ डेवलपमेंट की बात कही, जिसको इनोवेशन सिर्फ आदरणीय प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब ने एक पर्टिकुलर फील्ड के लिए नहीं बोला कि वो हम आर्मी के लिए करें या टेक्नोलॉजी आईटी मैनेजमेंट के लिए करें, उन्होंने हर फील्ड में, बिकॉज अभी अभी हमारे सीनियर पैनलिस्ट बोल रहे थे, इनोवेशन मीन्स टेकिंग बेस्ट आउट ऑफ द लिमिटेड रिसोर्सेज और लिमिटेड वट एवर वी हैव, बिकॉज अभी हमारे पास जनसंख्या 135 करोड़ के आसपास है, रिसोर्स हमारे पास डिफरेंट जो रिसोर्स हैं वो लिमिटेड रिसोर्स हैं, लेकिन जो हमारी इनोवेशन है उन्हीं लिमिटेड रिसोर्सेज में हमें बहुत कुछ दिला सकती है। जैसे आज हम फूड ग्रेन्स पे पूरी तरीके से हम इंडिपेंडेंट हैं, हम एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, हमें इंपोर्ट करने की जरूरत नहीं है। आज जब विश्व में प्रॉब्लम आई तो हम लोगों ने गेहूं दूसरे देशों को दिया, और हमने जब गेहूं टेम्परेली बंद किया तो पूरे विश्व में उससे हलचल मची। तो ये एक इनोवेशन है और ये कंटिन्यूसली चलनी है। अभी बात रही आपकी कि 25 साल का जो टास्क है, क्या इट कैन बी ब्रोकन आउट? यस, इट इज ऑलरेडी बीन ब्रोकन आउट। इट इज अ रोड मैप। आदरणीय प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब इज स्पीकिंग after he has already prepared the roadmap. He has a roadmap for the infrastructure. He has a roadmap for information technology. He has a roadmap for the army. He has a roadmap for the youth development. He has a roadmap for the skill development. He has a roadmap for the R&D. He has a roadmap for science and space. And he has already decided. Just see, हमारे देश ने सबसे तेजी से जो कार्बन एम्बिशन है उसके टारगेट को अचीव किया है। हमारा देश अभी रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी पे बहुत तेजी से काम कर रहा है। रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी का टारगेट जो हमने 2030 के लिए सेट किया था, वी आर गोइंग टू अचीव दैट टारगेट इन 2025 itself. So we have the roadmap for each and every sector, and as per the roadmap, we are trying to achieve.
Okay. Yes. You particularly
like,
mentioned about the energy sector, and that was the focus area of the Prime Minister, whether it is solar energy, whether it is EV, or it is about hydrogen mission, that have all been given the fresh impetus by the Prime Minister, and the funds that have also been infused.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.